I'm Alexandros Washburn, former chief urban designer of New York City, and I'm here to answer your questions from the internet. This is City Planning Support. @Urbanist.org asks, how can cities make bike lanes safer? The answer might surprise you. You know what we found out in New York? The best way to make a bike lane safer on, say, 6th Avenue? Park cars next to it. We moved the parking lane away from the curb and put the bike lane on the sidewalk side of the cars. Now those parked cars act like a buffer. ERWNN asks, is the New York City Subway really that bad compared to other World City metro systems? Short answer is yes. It's a great system in the way it's been laid out and how many miles it is. It's one of the world's largest systems. It hasn't been maintained very well. And one of the reasons is that the city that never sleeps, we never shut down the subways at night to fix them. The cumulative effects of lack of maintenance or sleep for our subways have really caught up with us. And things are not good right now. It's also interesting if you go to another city with a major metro system, say like Moscow, you will be amazed at how fast the trains run and how fast the escalators go. There's just kind of a sense of pace that we seem to have lost. We have neglected our subways, and we have a long way to go to make them halfway as good as many cities around the world. @DeepYearning asks, guys, can anyone help me understand something? Is rent control bad or good? Like, what are the pros and cons of it? Rent control is a tool to make cities more affordable. It should be a good thing. Some places in the world where rent control is actually a national policy, say Germany, has a pretty stable, solid housing market. It seems to work. But then again, rent control in other places has different effects. Sometimes people don't want to build a building if they know it's going to be rent controlled in the future. Sometimes banks don't want to give a loan on a building that will be rent controlled in the future because nobody knows what the future will bring, and development starts drying up. Why can rent control be workable in one place and then have a chilling effect on another? And you know what? I think the answer is actually societal. You know, places where it works best are relatively homogeneous societies. It becomes a policy tool, not a discrimination tool. Keep rent control in your toolkit, but there are other tools like rent support vouchers or simply increase your supply. @InfoSec Taylor. Okay, Boston folk, you win. This is the worst city I have driven in. You get the gold medal. Why would you let your city planners do this to you? As we all know, Boston was planned by cows. Essentially, the streets of Boston follow 17th century cow paths that crisscrossed it. It's as simple as that. Sometimes even the planners aren't at fault. @PKCG5 asks, why so green, Singapore? Singapore, one of my favorite cities. A green city because it made a decision at its very start to be a city in a park. Everything about it is geared towards bringing the nature into the city and using nature like infrastructure. Part of their main issues is, of course, the very hot climate. So nature becomes a way of creating a microclimate. So the plants have a cooling effect on the city. In fact, they're little solar panels. They take solar energy and they turn it into biomass. And that biomass pulls the energy out of the microclimate system, and beyond that turns it into shade, which then protects the pavement itself from getting over hot, and it creates oxygen to boot. It's a win-win-win. Singaporeans are pretty smart. Damon Prince of Corn. What airports are perfect, close to perfect, or otherwise great? So Singapore is the best because anytime they have to figure out how many square feet do we need for, say, security, they double it, triple it, quadruple it. They know that everything is growing, so they look ahead. Then they ask, are people bored in between flights? The answer was yes. So they built the most incredible nature park inside of an airport with hundreds foot tall waterfall, incredible jungle trails you can take, shopping, dining. It becomes a place. It would be good for us in the United States to start thinking about it that way. Let's make an airport you actually will be delighted to visit. All right, Energy per 250 ml serve asks, are there any cities that are really doing everything or almost everything right in regards to urban planning? The answer is yes. And that city is Paris. They do everything right, and it's very annoying. Bike share, they did it first. New York, we love our city bikes, but we stole the idea. The High Line, they did it first. It was called the Promenade Plantée. We stole it. The next one that I'd like to steal from them is that they've made a network of streets that are meant to get to schools. So they're like super safe streets. Streets where you'd be happy for your kids to walk on their own or bike on their own to school. What a great idea. Let's steal that one too. @Indava asks, what makes a smart city smart? A smart city is a city that makes the right decisions. Now, the best cities right now for smart are the ones that have great databases because the data helps you make the right decision. An example of data a smart city would use are traffic flows. Where are all the cars right now? Where are they going to be? What are the impediments? How do we open up? How do we change the patterns? It's the ability to respond in real time that makes a really good smart city really smart. Reddit sub-admin, what is the biggest reason America is so car dependent? The one thing that says it all is a phrase from the 1950s. What's good for General Motors is good for America. The United States, right at the beginning of its largest growth spurt, decided that cars were the answer. Everything in American city planning was dimensioned to a car. How far it turns, how many parking spaces you have to have, how wide the streets are, etc. Once you make those decisions, you can't change them. It's called path dependency. To change that requires a lot of ingenuity. We talked earlier about how you put bike lanes and parking lanes together, but it's going to require thinking outside the box, thinking outside the car. @Lianen Saurise, not sure why they aren't turning the current empty office blocks into small apartments. Don't we need housing more than offices? Indeed we do. And it's totally doable, except that we stand in our own way. We've created an incredible framework of rules that a building has a specific use and only one use. What are some of these rules that stand in the way? There's light and air is the first one. If you're in an apartment, you need to be able to open the window. And for some reason, somebody in the 60s or 70s came up with this idea that if you're in an office, you don't need to open a window. Now, that's not the way it is in Germany, but in America, it's that way. So you've got all these hermetically sealed buildings. And now we got to get past that. Open the window. And then people say, well, you're going to be too far away from a window if you fill an office building with apartments. You don't have to have the apartment go all the way back to the elevator. What if it stops 30 feet back, which is the current rule for how far away you can be from an opening window? And after that, why not make some space where we can perhaps have some vertical farming? Sure, you can put storage or middle of storage, but why not grow some vegetables? Okay, Status 6738 asks, what do you think are the current and future challenges that affect urban planning? It's declining population. We're not there yet, certainly not in America. Certain places are, like Bulgaria, for instance, where there are 1 million more apartments than there are people. The movement from the countryside to cities is starting to slow down. And we've been in this frenzy of city building, and we haven't done a very good job with it. The biggest challenge for urban planning, looking into the 50-year future, I'm not talking about next year, is what are we going to do when population starts to plateau and then decline, and then all the pressure on building more and new and better is not there. And we have to deal with what we have. Aaron Rose Glass, what if public libraries were open late every night and we could engage in public life there instead of having to choose between drinking at the bar and domestic isolation? Great suggestion, but I wouldn't limit it just to public libraries. Every city's got to have public space. If you don't exclude people, everyone comes together. Whether it's your library or your park, or in the ideal world, every street that you can walk down should be a place where you can respectfully interact with your fellow citizens. And that interaction is what builds up sociability. @Wildflower Milk, whoever made tolls a thing, I just want to talk. Like, why do I have to pay to drive around the city I live in? What the Who pays? Who pays for the roadbed? Who pays for maintaining the streets? Can you pay a toll? Can you pay the full cost of driving around your city? Well, we've never done that in America. We've always hidden the true cost of driving in other budgets and not passed them on to cars. There's always been one toll in America, and that is the highway gas tax. But that is an absurdly small percentage of every gallon of gas you buy. Congestion pricing, tolling cars in certain areas of the city, that's a way to try to recover some of the costs of maintaining a road network in a city and pass them on to the people who actually are using them, the drivers, and not to bury them into the municipal tax budget, which otherwise could go to schools or daycare. At Eddie345 asks, how to survive in 51 degrees Celsius summer heat in Dubai? As someone who has been in 51 degrees Celsius summer heat in Dubai, I know what you're feeling. The three things you've got to do. Number one, you can adjust your clothing. There are certain standards of kind of international dress, suits and shoes and stuff like that. Forget about those in the 51 degrees. Open-toed shoes are fine. 2, adapt your hours. Don't go out in the middle of the day. Dubai at nighttime can also be pretty hot and humid. So that gets me to the third one, and that is humidity control. We've been so focused on air conditioning and bringing the temperature down, but you'll find that a lot of what makes you comfortable is a certain level of humidity relative to a certain temperature. Dehumidification takes less energy than air conditioning, and guess what it makes? It makes water. And who needs water? Oh, the Gulf states need water. As you pull that humidity out of the atmosphere, you make yourself more comfortable and you create for yourself some potable water. C. Sosa asks, how do you fix LA traffic? My answer is, maybe you don't. LA is a much more progressive city than we understand from urban planning tours because it is what's called a polycentric city. Yes, LA has huge traffic problems, but over time, different neighborhoods have started growing into places. Now LA is becoming a city of cities. Once you do that, you can start not needing a car as much. LA, everybody loves to hate it for the traffic, but it may have a thing on the future where if it succeeds in connecting its nodes through things other than cars, then it's going to thrive. And we might be looking to LA in the future as an example, not a punchline. That's it. That's all the questions. Hope you learned something. Till next time.